So in this video, I want to give you some information that's going to help you understand what's going to make it so your dog learns quickly and efficiently. Studies show that if a dog finishes its food within 15 minutes, then it's going to learn faster and learn better and learn under more difficult circumstances. So one goal would be to get your dog finishing its meals within 15 minutes. Now, I understand not all the dogs out there do that, and there's three major causes to that problem. One is medical. If a dog's not well, then it makes sense that it's not going to eat its food within 15 minutes. Another one is stress. So highly stressed dogs at the time of stress are going to start reducing food, even though that same food they would normally be taking under other circumstances. Sometimes in group class situations we see this, where the owner has a really, really good treat and the dog's just refusing it. They won't eat it. That's stress that's causing it. If you have a dog that's newly adopted into your house, it might not be eating well yet. That would be stress that's causing it. But 90% of the time, the cause of the problem is something you have control over, and that is the amount of food you're feeding. Typically, the real cause of the problem is that we're simply overfeeding dogs. We're putting too much food in the bowl. But that's okay because you can save money as well as make it so your dog finishes its meals within 15 minutes. All you need to do is measure the food in a measuring cup. Put it down for 15 minutes. Measure what's left after 15 minutes and jot down a note. And that note, write down how much the dog did eat. Repeat that for 6 meals. And then add up the total amount and divide by the number 6, and you're going to know how much food you should be putting in the bowl. Some dogs will be leaving a little bit of food still, so just recalculate a new set of 6 feedings and you'll have an accurate amount. So that's going to make it so you save money as well as make it so your dog learns faster. When your dog is just being around you, it's forming a lot of associations. And these associations is the dog's learning things. There's 2 different types of associations your dog's going to form. One is called classical conditioning. If you've heard of Pavlov and his bell, that was classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is an association that is a physiological response in the body in association with something in the environment. So an example of this with Pavlov's bell is dogs heard a bell ring and then Pavlov fed the dogs. And what happened over a period of time is if the dogs heard the bell, it would cause salivation. That's the physiological response. The salivation would start in response to the sound of the bell because the dog's body is anticipating food. And so classical conditioning is what happens when your dog is socializing, or if your dog's already afraid of something. This is all a result of classical conditioning. So if you want your dog to be sociable, or you want your dog to form pleasant associations, we have to make sure all stimuli is presented in a positive way in order for those positive associations to be made. Now, the other type of conditioning and associations that dogs make is what you're probably way more familiar with, and that's operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is an association of if the dog does a behavior, then something happens. If something good happens, the dog's going to do that behavior more. So if I say sit and the dog sits and I give it a cookie, then the dog's more likely to sit when I say sit. We're rewarding a behavior. Whereas with the classical conditioning, it's all physiological reactions. There's no behavior to reward. It's an emotion. So here's a human example. If you smile at me and the person beside you hands you 10 bucks, you're going to smile at me more often. If your dog sits and you give it something that it likes, a cookie for sitting, then it's going to sit more often. We also have the opposite. If it's something the dog dislikes or something that you dislike, then the behavior is going to become weaker. So a human example would be you're speeding. As soon as your odometer passes up the speed limit, ping, a ticket falls down from the ceiling of your roof and the money's automatically deducted from your checking account. Big painful event. We didn't like that. So speeding is going to reduce. For a dog, let's say it's jumping on you, and it's jumping and jumping and jumping, and you just ignore it. You don't give the dog any attention for it at all. Over time, that behavior is going to reduce because it's not serving the dog's purpose anymore. Now, it's not that simple because there's other things at play, but that is what happens with operant conditioning. So when we're training dogs, we need to have something that motivates them, some reason for them to do things that we want them to do. If I want my dog to turn away from a flock of birds that it's chasing and to come racing to me instead, I need to have something that motivates the dog to do it, makes the dog want to do that when I ask it to do that. And so motivation can be a variety of things, but it needs to be something the dog's going to go out of its way to get. Something that's strong, something they really, really want. So if I ask you to do me a favor, and I say, and in return, I'm going to take you out for a broccoli dinner, I'm not only going to get really odd looks, but you're not going to do me the favor because that seems so below what would be an appropriate pay scale for a favor. But if I said, I'll take you out for a lobster dinner or a steak dinner or to your favorite restaurant, then if it was in proportion to the amount of effort you had put in, you'd probably say, yeah, let's do it. No broccoli dinners for the dog. Okay, so as you're looking at what you use for rewards, I want you to think really carefully, because what we don't want is we don't want the dog to get bored of its rewards. So we want to use appropriate rewards for the environment. We don't want to use something better than what we need in an environment. Here's an example. When I'm training Huli inside my house, the primary food reward she gets is the measured portion of her meal, her kibble. I measure it up. I use some of that at training time. Some of it might go in reward stations, and I'm set. So I want to make sure that I'm not using the better treats in that easy environment. Now I take Huli out in my front yard. That environment is a little bit more difficult. So that's when I pull out my store-bought treats. She's more distracted, there's traffic going by, she's not out there very much, and so it's a more novel environment. So I need just a little bit higher reward in that environment, and so store-bought treats will work. But when I'm working with Huli out in public, I don't use store-bought treats. I use little tiny pieces of meat and little pieces of cheese, things that she's going to go crazy over and say, oh my gosh, I get that here? Sure, anything you want. I'll do anything for you. So we're looking at having the right reward in the right environment. So when we're training a dog, we want the training to be efficient. We want it to be effective. And in order to do this, we need to communicate to the dog at the exact moment which it does the correct behavior so it knows why it's getting the reward. If you think about it, when you tell your dog to sit, the amount of time after it sits it takes you to get your reward and to get it into the dog could do 3 to 5 things in that period of time because there's a delay. And so the dog's not sure, did I get the reward for this, or this? And so we use marker signals to clarify this communication for the dog. A marker signal is some type of sound that is short and unique. And the meaning of the sound is, here comes your reward. I use 2 different marker signals in my training. I use one marker signal when I want the dog to understand that calmness is the desired behavior and that I still want that calmness to continue even after the reward. And I use another marker signal when I want action, and it's okay to have some degree of excitability there, like coming when called and loose leash walking, and even sitting down, the behaviors of sitting down, I'll use my action marker signal. Okay, so we have a couple of choices. A clicker is a very common marker signal. This is my clicker. When I'm using a clicker, then I make sure that the clicker is held against the leash. So the clicker and the leash are in one hand. The clicker is just resting on top of the leash. And that way I can manipulate both of those with one hand. My other hand is the one that's going to be accessing rewards and delivering the rewards to my dog. So I don't need a third hand. Some people are a little bit hesitant to use a clicker, and that's okay. I understand why. One is you're worried you won't have it on you when you need to. You don't have to. The clicker is used during structured training. When I want to teach my dog sit and I'm going to spend 3 minutes teaching sit, that's when I grab the clicker. I don't have it on me at other times. It just speeds up the learning process during that structured training time. So, yay, it helps us out. So, my calmness marker signal, I use the word nice, and I don't draw out the sound. So I say nice. It's a short sound. It's novel. I don't say that to my dog on a regular basis, where I do say good or good dog or good girl on a regular basis. So I chose something that's going to be unique and different than what I normally say. So our goal between now and your first lesson is to start teaching the dog that this sound means here comes a reward. This is really simple and easy to do, and your dog's going to love the process. So, I've got my clicker and leash in one hand. I've got my treats on me. My hands are by my side. I'm going to click my clicker one time. Then I'm going to get my food and deliver it to my dog. And then I'm going to click my clicker one time. Get my food, deliver it to my dog. Each time I'm done delivering the food, my hands just go by my side. They don't go into the cookie jar again. They go by my side. I click my clicker, get a piece of food, deliver. If I do that 25 times in a row, each day, in a couple of days, my dog will understand that sound. But I can also do that with the word nice. I would say nice, then get my food and deliver. Not using my clicker under those circumstances. My hands go by my side, nice. Get my food, deliver. I say the word nice. Get my food and deliver. 25 times in a row for a couple of days, and your dog's going to understand what that word means. So when we're teaching dogs, we want to make sure that we have all of our equipment ready to go. So I'm going to go over the equipment that we typically use, and it's pretty simplistic. It's stuff that you'll already have. So many people already have a clicker. Great, use the one that you have. You can see that I have a treat bag on my waist. The brand that I like best is Rapid Rewards brand. And in here is a cup instead of a plastic bag. The cup holds the whole thing open, makes it so I can quickly get my food in and out. My hand can go in quickly. I can get the food into the dog quickly. Whereas if I have a plastic bag in there, it's going to crumble down. And I'm going to be struggling to get the food out. So I want something that's going to make it so I can get the food out quickly. I'm also going to want a toy that is long, at least 12 inches long, one that does not make noise, because the noise of the toy will attract every other dog in a group class situation, make you seem obnoxious in a public situation. And I want at least 12 inches so there's plenty of room for the dog's mouth and extra room for your hand. I don't want the dog making contact with your hand. We're going to want something for the dog to chew on, a pacifier during times in which you're listening to lecture. So that could be some type of safe bone that's going to last an hour. This one is one that's stuffed with a food product. You could use a food toy that's stuffed. Lots of options there. And we're going to want a mat, something big enough that your dog can fit all 4 feet on easily, comfortably fit all 4 feet on. So this one is a bath mat. It could be a throw rug. We have a lot of options there, and you probably already have something easily around the house. And then the treats we want to use are small, no larger than the size of a pea. So you can see in relationship to my fingers, this is a pretty small treat. If my dog is 25 pounds or over, I want that small size. If the dog's 12 pounds, I need half that size in order to make it so that I'm not filling up the dog. I want to reward the dog, but not fill up the dog.
When dogs are barking and whining in class, owners learn less and leave class pretty stressed out. Not to mention, having the barking dog in class is not fun. It is very stressful for the owner of the barking dog, and most likely the dog is stressed too. This is why the enrollment application asks if your dog will bark more than a couple minutes. Dogs that'll bark more than a couple minutes are transferred to private training. This is not to say the dogs are going to be completely silent. There will be some vocalizations, but we want to minimize the barking and whining and set ourselves up for as much success as possible. First, we should assume our dog is going to do some barking. That is what dogs do, but we want to be prepared to deal with it. Your first line of defense is to bring a safe animal product chew to class. The chew is only put down if your dog is going to vocalize. It can occupy the dog from getting bored. If your dog is not vocalizing, don't put the chew item down. There are two main types of barking problems that will happen in class: attention-getting barking and fear-based barking, and what you do about each type is different. Attention-getting barking is when the dog is barking at you to get your attention, or when the dog is happy and barking at another dog. I understand this can be very stressful, but I have a great solution for you. Because this is an attention-getting behavior, we want to remove all attention from the dog. Stop looking at it. Stop trying to hush it. Stop petting it. As soon as your dog engages in attention-getting barking, disconnect all attention from your dog. Refrain from giving it eye contact, touching it. Instead, stand up, walk 10 feet into the center of the room so you're not walking towards another dog or person, and then walk back to your bench. This is brilliant. The barking will be interrupted but not rewarded. Now, make sure you get your dog involved in that wonderful animal product chew that you brought with you before the barking begins again. Fear-based barking sounds more like a warning, and it will not ever be directed at you. Your dog's body will look wary and threatening. If your dog is fearful, you want to feed your dog treats until your dog has relaxed. Don't worry, you won't be rewarding barking, but you will be changing your dog's emotional associations, and that is a really good thing. And your last secret word is the word reward. Type it into the fourth box, click send, and I'll know you're ready for class so I can send you some more information.